One. You're on.
Hey guys, it's Ash and Gonzo.
And this is Genuine.
What's going on this morning?
Oh, not much, let me tell you. Great morning in the DFW area. But I'm so glad the weekend's on because we're leaving Monday for spring break.
Oh, fun. Where are you guys going?
We're going back home to Puerto Rico.
Oh, great. Some surfing, I'm sure, is on the agenda.
Absolutely. Surfing, seeing the family. My brother is actually turning 50 this year.
Okay.
And so we're going to take the opportunity just to going down to Puerto Rico. And, we do it for spring break, and we oftentimes do that. This year, I'm taking the family to Puerto Rico. We don't always go to Puerto Rico during spring break because we typically go during the Christmas holidays. But this year we didn't go because of everything that was going on with the hurricane and Maria and stuff.
Right.
So we decided that not to go this year to Puerto Rico during the Christmas holiday, which bummed out my mother. But
sure.
But this week, basically, well, this time we actually decided that we're going to go to Puerto Rico and take the kids for spring break. So we're going from Monday to Saturday through Saturday.
Okay.
And we'll be there for a few days and chilling out. And Natalie hasn't been in Puerto Rico since the hurricane. So it's, she wants to see.
How are things down there right now?
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, it's still iffy. I was there. I can't remember, just recently, just after the hurricane, I actually visited. And, what was obvious when I visited down there that it is pretty, has been very, very devastated by the hurricane. I mean, the metropolitan area is slowly getting up from the disaster, but I have to tell you that the rest of the island is just sad. It's just really sad. And what the hurricane did, it really discovered and showed that Puerto Rico is a third world country, and
right.
that we're just lucky to be in with the United States and part of the United States. But even that, even that is actually kind of harsh, to realize the fact that the people in Puerto Rico are suffering so much right now because there's no electricity in certain areas of the island. Infrastructure has been devastated. And, despite the fact that people say, well, the electricity's back. Well, define how electricity is back. I mean,
right.
if once in a while you have electricity, that's cool. But it's not that way all the time. So
right.
It's inconsistent. It's kind of shady. And so I think that I hear a story every month that the grid just goes off and people lose power. And so it's
awful.
It's awful. But you know what? We're going back home and we're going to see our family. And in fact, Natalie's brother just recently had a baby. And so, she hasn't seen our nephew. I haven't seen our nephew either. So we're going to go there and also see our nephew. So it's going to be fun.
That's fun.
Yeah. How about you? How was your week?
Well, I've had better weeks. Olivia got horribly sick.
Oh, really?
Last weekend, I got her after the show, got her up, and she was just on fire. I could just radiating heat, and had 103.5 fever. And so luckily able to get her into the pediatrician, which going to the pediatrician is never fun, but especially on a Saturday when you're there for 3 hours. But the poor thing had a raging double ear infection. Luckily tested negative for the flu and RSV, but her fever only went up from there. We were almost at 105 on Sunday night and in the ER. And so it really took it out of her this week. She finally turned a corner yesterday. But
wow, that's a whole week.
She broke her fever on Tuesday, but I think just having a fever for that many days and her being so little, it wiped her. I mean, she was just out of it, not wanting to eat, not wanting to drink anything. But yeah, she's never been sick. Unfortunately, I mean, we've made it nearly 18 months without her being sick. So we're really lucky, but I just felt so bad for her because my biggest concern became she wasn't drinking anything.
Right.
And she doesn't understand that she needs to, as adults, when we get sick, even though we might not want to eat or drink, we know we need to, but with her, there's no compromising with a kid. Like if they don't want to do something, they're going to put their foot down and be like, no. And so it was to the point I was having to give her fluids through a medicine syringe just to get fluids in her. So
Well, that story reminds me, in fact, about, when Julian was, and I told you Julian's our oldest one, and now I told you he's driving and doing all these things, but
right.
when he was around the same age as Olivia, in fact, I think he just recently turned 2. We were in Cleveland, and it's actually this time, it's scary because it was this same time of year. It had to be somewhere in January when Julian was about to turn 2. He wasn't 2. He was born in February, so he was about to turn 2. And we had gotten back, I think, from a vacation in Puerto Rico, and it was around that time of year, and we were in Cleveland, and it was snowing, and it was cold, and Julian had gotten a cold. And so I remember that I was at work, and I was still a resident, and I was at work, and Natalie had called me telling me Julian's got a fever, he's not feeling well, and same problem that you had. Same problem that you had. Natalie couldn't get him to take Tylenol or anything to try to get that fever down, and he wasn't drinking and wasn't feeling well. Now, fortunately enough, I that day was able to leave work at a reasonable time. I mean, reasonable being 7:00 at night.
Right.
And I got home, and I certainly, as soon as I saw Julian, he had the sunken eyes.
Uh-huh.
They
look pathetic.
Yeah,
like they just look like they feel terrible.
They're miserable. They're miserable, right? And so I get home, and so I'm holding him, and I'm trying to get him to drink a little bit, and sure enough, I'm trying to get him to take some Tylenol to see if we can get the fever down. The fever actually had rose up to 103, something like that. And so I was like, okay, we got to go and see a pediatrician. And we were trying to sort of manage the situation. Doctor being a doctor, which always is a bad sign. You think you can manage everything.
Right.
But in any case, so same problem that you had. He wouldn't take anything.
It's awful.
Just refusing. But the scary thing about it was that I go to I'm holding him in one arm. I'm turning on the TV to sit down on the couch and basically get him to sort of fall asleep, so that way I can con him into taking something.
Right.
And then, and so all of a sudden, as I turn on the TV and I turn to him, I notice that he's turning his eyes up into his, like,
oh no.
up. Yes. And he all of a sudden turns blue. Ash, he was having a seizure.
I was just about to ask. Oh my gosh.
But
that's my worst nightmare.
Let me tell you. So he stopped breathing. So he locks, right? And so now I'm like, and so, the difficult thing about being a doctor and being a parent, I think of anybody having to be in this situation, is the fact that, what do you do? And so I'm trying not to freak out, and I'm going through my mind trying to see, what am I going to do here? And Natalie is just, losing it. And I said, just call 911. And I lay him down, and for 20 seconds, now let me tell you something. If you want to have a hair-raising experience, at some point after the show, just take your phone and put the timer for 20 seconds, or just put the clock for 20 seconds.
Right.
It is the longest period of your life. And
I can't even imagine.
I'm giving him mouth to mouth.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden he snaps out of it. And he kind of sort of is a little bit drowsy and whatnot. And I'm finally saying, oh my God, he's back.
Right.
And he broke the seizure. And so, we took him to the ED and everything was okay. We had to do the CAT scans, and, sure enough.
Was it a febrile seizure? Like he doesn't have.
No, he hasn't had anything since, and it was a febrile seizure. But it goes to show you can't mess around with those things. And you're right. I thought that we were going to be able to get his medicine. He was refusing to taking his Tylenol and anything, and so when we got to the ED, they loaded him up with I don't know if it was IV or a suppository, but regardless of the route, I mean, he got all the Motrin, the Tylenol that he needed, and the fever broke, and then he kind of sort of felt better, and we went, and he never had anything like that after that. But we did have to go to the neurologist because doctors being doctors, they wanted to make sure that he didn't have anything.
Oh, of course.
And so, but it was so tough because he had to get a CAT scan, and he was just fighting it. And it's so, the end of the story that I'll tell you is that I'm carrying away from the CAT scan, and he's like whimpering because he's not feeling well, but he also didn't like the experience of a CAT scan.
Right. Right.
because he had to be strapped down.
Oh yeah, they
said,
really strap him down.
Yeah, and I'm holding him, and the little guy's like, whimpering and looking at me and holding me, and I said, just say bye-bye to CAT scan, and he's like, bye-bye.
No, it's scary because again, I realized she's a great medicine taker, and she was spiking this fever up to nearly 105 with Motrin and Tylenol on board. Like that's what was really worrying me. So it's just, I don't want to go through that again. I'll tell you what.
Well, let me tell you. And one of the things that I've realized is that there's no handbook or any instructions of being a parent. This thing about being a parent, I'll tell you that having to do it day in and day out, it's a full-time job. But there is no manual for this. Nobody can explain what being a parent is. And even when your parents and everybody else tells you, oh, yeah, that's happened to me, you're like, yeah, great. But it still doesn't make it any better, right?
Right. Doesn't make it any easier.
So what you got today?
Well, did you watch the Oscars last week?
I sure did. Actually, I watched I was actually looking up this morning. I was looking up something about the Oscars, and the first thing is that I think it's too long of a ceremony.
Yes,
I like it.
Everyone would agree.
But 4 damn hours, really? I mean,
even the host said that. Even Jimmy Kimmel was like, he goes, I kept going, we still have to go back out there.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And you know what? In an era in which the attention span of people is now limited to looking at a video and trying to find out how long do I have, and how long the video is, knowing that you're going in for 4 hours, it's a brutal undertaking.
Yes.
And you know what? I did watch it, and I watched it because I do that every year. I typically sit down and watch it for an hour or two. But after the first hour and a half, I'm like, I'm done. And I wish they would have just basically rushed to the last, and so you can find out the critical
right.
Oscars as
well. That's why they do that at the end, so they'll keep you coming or keep you there.
Yeah. But that it was interesting to find out that this year the Oscar viewing rate was down about 20%.
I can believe that. I didn't know that, but I could believe that.
It's just too long. I mean, it's a Sunday, so the next day, you got to go to work, and kids have to go to school, and you don't want to start the day, So anyway, I did watch the Oscars, but I have, I guess that I'm not the only show host that actually has to recommend something to the Oscars. Guys, make it shorter for the love of Christ. Figure it out. It's 2018. We don't have to do a show for 4 hours. And let me tell you, the public, the majority of people watching the Oscars just want to get to the nitty-gritty of it. So figure it out. There's a lot of things that I think that you can just do in some other party. Do it afterwards or do it before, but just get the main show. I'll bet you. If they do it for 2 hours, you're going to have equal amount of people watching it, and probably, and you can charge more for your ads because it's less. But yeah, I did watch the Oscars. I went on my soapbox again. So tell me about the Oscars.
Well, I didn't really watch them because that's when Olivia was super sick. And so I watched some snippets of it. Of course, the recaps the following day. But what were your thoughts on it? Because like I said, I didn't really watch it.
Well, I'll tell you. So the first thing is that I'm watching too much kids' movies. That's my first thought. Okay.
So had you seen any of these movies that were up?
I haven't.
I hadn't either. That's why I also didn't have much interest in it.
I got to tell you, I'm actually looking through. I listen to the list of people every time that they announce each category, and they kept on mentioning movies over and over again. And I had no slightest clue of what they were talking about. It's like this year I didn't go to the movies, but I know I went to the movies because none of the movies that I watched were Oscar nominated, which begs the question, what's happening to me? Because I'm going to tell you, years ago, I used to know every single movie that was going into the Oscars because I took the time to go to the theaters and watching it. But the fact that this is the stage of my life that I'm in, and I've got 3 young boys. And so what I'm going to tell you, I can tell you about Star Wars. I thought it was a great movie. Last show that we did, I told you about the Black Panther, and oh, by the way, it's killing box office sales. Still at this stage. I watched Thor. The Ragnarok, whatever it is. I thought that was probably one of the best movies that I watched all year. But the titles that I saw that were being nominated and won Academy Awards this year were completely, I mean, I must have slept through the entire year. I mean, seriously, you know, I mean, maybe I did. Maybe one of the movies that did catch my eye was Dunkirk.
Yes.
And it was because it was, you know, the wartime movie that had all the makings of Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That probably was the reason that it caught my attention. And I saw more ads about Dunkirk over the years than I did of any of the other movies that were actually nominated or even won Oscars.
And that's the thing, is that you're still not seeing a lot of advertisements for the films that won.
No.
It's bizarre. I mean, there are a couple that I really want to see, but I mean, I'm in that stage of my life as well to where I got to get a babysitter if I'm going to go to the movies. And there are plenty of other things I'd rather go do when I have a babysitter than go sit the movies.
Yeah. Now I will say that that going to the movies has changed considerably since you and I started going to the movies. You know, because now you can go to the movie and grill, you know, and sit down, and the guys with these
food and bar and
and you can sit down, you can have a bottle of wine, which back in the day you had to sneak in a beer.
Right.
Well, some theaters you still have to sneak in alcohol. I know my wife does that with the little containers of not water, but the little cooler containers. They put them.
Right.
They walk in and they start sharing, you know, wine. But it's actually been a change. But again, not digress into the experience of going to the movies. I just didn't have a slightest clue what was in the Oscars, and half, you know, probably 90% of the movies that were nominated, I didn't know anything about. Yeah. I will tell you that one of the movies that did catch my eyes. Well, let me say, I did watch Beauty and the Beast. I thought Beauty and the Beast was a wonderful movie.
Was it?
Yeah, the adaptation from the theater and also the animated movie from Disney. Beauty and the Beast was a wonderful movie. If you want to watch a movie that and again, Olivia's not going to get it, but you know, she's probably getting close to the princess and the beast and all that stuff. So I think that I don't know, give it a try. I don't know that at 17 months she's gonna get it. But the bottom line is that it's a really nice movie. It's a really cute movie. I like that one.
That's good to know.
The one that I have to tell you, and I was actually going to ask you about, because, you know, the whole thing about the Oscars this year had to do with the theme about abuse in the workplace, gender rights, you know, equality, and you know, raising awareness about, you know, all these things that are happening in the world, from wars to like we talked about Puerto Rico, you know, national disasters. The one that actually caught my eye, which also was the first time that I saw that happening, and I can't remember when was the last time that happened, was the movie that won an Oscar for animated short. You know which one that was?
I don't.
It was Dear Basketball.
Was it the one that Kobe Bryant?
Yeah, and Kobe Bryant won an award.
Right.
And you know, I mean, first of all, it was the first time that I'd seen an athlete, you know, won an Oscar, and maybe I haven't paid close attention. I haven't done my research about which other athletes have actually won Oscars, but certainly Kobe Bryant is a national, international figure that is recognizable, and he won an Oscar, and that was really cool to see up there. But what I heard afterwards, after the Oscars, and shortly after the Oscars, Natalie and I were commenting about it, was that the people at Twitter start taking the time to criticize the fact that in a year in which women's rights are so much in front of the public, about equal pay and discrimination and, you know, harassment in the workplace and all that stuff, that Kobe Bryant got an award, you know, because he was charged. Well, he was charged and never found guilty, and then later basically got to an agreement outside of court after his arrest. Not, it wasn't an arrest, but he basically
there were allegations of sexual assault.
Of sexual assault back in 2003.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that, but I totally didn't think about it, but there was something about it when he stood up there and the whole ambiance about, gender rights and, women equality in that industry in particular. I don't know. There was a little bit of something there for me. It kind of made me realize, I don't know how this is going to look, but it is what it is. Apparently it was a great film. So I want to watch it.
Well, and they had to have known that this was going to become an issue, and he had to have known going into this that if he won, that everything was going to resurface again, and there was going to be a lot of controversy. You know what I mean? I mean, if it wasn't that long ago that these allegations came about, so people still remember very, very clearly about this.
Well, let me ask you a question. So given the time and eras that we're in right now, and I don't want to get too serious about this, but I am curious to see what your take on it is. As a woman in the workplace, and you have seen now, you've been in nursing, several years now, and have gone from cath lab to ICU and vice versa, all that stuff. What through your process, even through school, what did you experience any of that?
You might experience, like, especially in the hospital, like you might have some people like make a remark or something, but nothing that I would ever be like, nothing that I would ever say, oh, I need to go speak up about this. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, you have people in there, oh, looking good today, or things like that. And yes, some people can completely take that out of context or be offended by that. But things like that, I just personally, they don't bother me, and I don't think that they should be taken too seriously.
Well, and that's where I was trying to sort of figure out, because one of the things that I always worry about it, and let me tell you, being a Latin American and having grown up in a Latin American culture, there are things that we do differently from mainland.
Right.
USA. Okay. And I've had to change my
mentality.
I just have to be careful. Okay.
Right.
Let me give an example. So if you go to Puerto Rico, everybody kisses each other when they're saying hi. Sometimes they give you 2 kisses. Okay?
Right.
I mean, and or they hug each other, or they throw the arm at each other, and there's always a remark if you look cute or something like that. It's a very free living society, and I'd say very Latin American society, right?
Right.
And so, but in the United States, I have to be so careful, because you're right. You gotta watch it, what you say, because it's
and
not
the tone in which you say it, because it could be just the wrong person that you say something to, and it can be so innocent. Yeah. And next thing you know, they're like, well, he was hitting on me, or he made some inappropriate comments about how I looked. I mean, I'll put it this way. I've worn scrubs most of my career. When I got to heart transplant and I was working in the office at times, I could wear regular street clothes. People look a lot different from scrubs to regular street clothes. Yeah. Am I right? And so there are times that I'd be wearing a dress that was clearly appropriate for work, and I would get comments, hey, you look really nice today. Love that dress. Some people could take that out of context. I didn't, but I could see how, especially as a male worker, that you have to be careful, because you hear more about it being males coming on to females rather than vice versa.
Well, and let me tell you, and honest to God, I'm not I don't claim to be the best looking man on earth. In fact, I'm not. But I've gotten compliments also. I have to admit, I at least have experienced also people saying, making remarks to me that that may be inappropriate from a sexual context point of view. And you know what? I just basically brush it off, or I laugh off. But you have to be careful with who you're talking to, because it's not only that like you said, you can get in trouble, in a lot of trouble, if you say the wrong thing, and it gets interpreted. But add to that the fact that there are bystanders, there are people looking, and they basically serve as witnesses. And if they have issue with what you're saying or how you're saying it, you're hosed.
Right. And now that everyone's senses are so heightened about this, you really have to be careful. I mean, I think back to things that were said 10 years ago when I worked in the ICU.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, man, if it was now,
are you kidding
me? Other people would be like, are you kidding me? You're going to let that slide?
Yeah.
Like, things like that. It's like, no, I'm not. But I think, and people might judge me for saying this, I sometimes think people are looking for something to be wrong with statements that are made. Like, they're so heightened that they're like, okay, that was wrong. And when it was all innocent.
Yeah.
In complete innocence.
So, and that's actually a really good point. So there are gestures that you do because you truly appreciate the person. And sometimes I want to say this so the listeners can get it straight. I am not advocating inappropriate, like touching,
Oh, absolutely not.
Listen, but come on, people. There are things that are socially acceptable, like wrapping your arm around somebody and saying thank you in a genuine gesture. Now, listen, if you're basically doing every day and listen, there are things that people feel uncomfortable. If you don't know the person, you don't just straight out of, you don't
touch someone that you don't know. Like,
right.
You don't give someone a hug when they're like, what's that about?
Well, so I'll tell you what, the other day we were in mitral valve clinic and I was talking to the lead cardiographer who I've known for, half a decade. And we were talking about the same topic. And I placed my arm around her and I said, this is the thing that you got to be careful, because it's not only you. I know I can do that with you because we have a relationship where we know each other and we know where the boundaries are. Okay. And I would not do that to her. I mean, today I wouldn't dare to cross that line. Right.
Right.
But you could see people that don't know us, that if I, and maybe it's the way, it's maybe like that statement from back in the, years ago in the 60s, when one of the justices said that the difference between art and pornography, what the difference is between art and pornography?
How it's interpreted? I can't.
Yeah. Okay. I just have to look at it and I know. I think that at the end of the day, a lot of this is not a subject. Well, it could be considered subjective. There's not an objective criteria to say what's appropriate and inappropriate, because there is so much into it. But I will say that I always worry because, I think that now we are swinging into one side, and it is just everybody's heightened about it.
Yes, and and the other thing is that you have to worry, like, you could have people that say got along, like, oh, hypothetically, you and I worked together for X amount of years, and all of a sudden, I just didn't like how you were handling things at work. It was like, I didn't like the cases that you were choosing. Then I could choose, I could have a personal vendetta, and so I could purposely take something out of context to try and get you. You know what I mean?
To me, that's malicious right there.
Yeah,
right?
But I feel like sometimes that's the case, is that there's a malicious intent. I'm not saying that there is not abuse in the workplace, because that unfortunately does happen, and people do need to come forward about that. But then I also think that there are sometimes cases that things could be malicious and it could be personal, and that's the other thing that's scary, is that you make allegations about that, especially in healthcare, where you've taken an oath to do no harm to people.
Yeah.
You could ruin someone's career.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, and it just recently happened in our society, or in our community, that there have been cases of doctors crossing that line, not with coworkers. I'm sure, well, I know of cases that people have taken that liberty, and those liberties with, texting or things that happen out there. And you know what, that, I'm no judge. The truth is somewhere in the middle. I know Shelley Hall has said that, though, use that statement that, when you have two differences of opinion, the truth is in the middle. Right. So, I'm never going to get in the middle of that, but take, for instance, the Michigan doc who has all
gymnast.
who has, what's his name? Nazar?
Yeah. Larry Nazar.
Yeah. So let's use that as an example of what it just revolts my stomach. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. That guy he should get everything he's going to get, moving forward, because the guy is a complete pig. Okay.
Oh, it's awful.
So to do what he did, he violated the most solemn oath that you have in medicine, which is trust. Right. I am so blown away by a person like that and he may have a mental illness. He may claim a lot of things, but this guy knowingly, molested kids
over decades.
Oh my God. Anyway, so that don't get me on that topic, because it'll drive me insane. But that I can't condone. That I get it. That's totally wrong. But what I'm talking about is these other areas that these things, right? And I'm not talking about that degree of sexual harassment or harassment in the workplace, but I do think that people are walking a little bit on eggshells now with anything and everything. And I think it's part of the transition, part of the healing process, right?
Yes.
We're going to have to sort of figure out what is appropriate, what's inappropriate, where do the lines get drawn. And certainly, like you said, there was stuff that people said and did. And I'm not talking about blatant crimes or blatant actions. I'm not talking about the Nassar situation. But yeah, people, I remember, 20 years ago, the stories that you heard about superiors of mine. And you know what? It's good and healthy that we're talking about it. But the problem is, like you pointed out, there is a group, there are people out there that are taking advantage of it. Like it always happens.
Right.
And trying to promote their own agendas and their own points of view.
Or things didn't turn out the way they wanted.
Yeah.
So, like I know of some affairs that occurred between doctors or nurses or whatever. And
let me tell you, that
broke it off.
Yeah.
Then it became personal, and it was like, wait a second, that was consensual on both parties. Just because it ended doesn't mean that all of a sudden now you come back and just ruin someone.
Well, so again, I know that we're not supposed to. You and I have agreed, and we're not going to talk about politics, okay?
Right.
And we agree this, but here's a story, and to me it edges on a little bit of what we're talking about, because it has to do with two adults consenting to having a relationship, whether it's inappropriate or it's and I get the whole thing with Stormy Daniels and the president. Okay. So here's the way that I also, this type of story sort of in my mind has also turned. Okay. I do agree that if Trump had an affair with, Stormy Daniels, that it's wrong. Okay.
Right.
But they went in to that, both of them, knowing that it was inappropriate. There is no way in God's green earth that an adult porn star, okay, or a porn star has an affair with a high-level, high-profile individual who she knows that he's married. And at least I think my sense is that he was married during that time.
Yes. That
this was not right. Okay?
Right.
Now, the problem that she's having right now is that she seems to be coming across, in my simple observation, and I don't know, and again, listeners, I know that there are people out there that are going to come in and say, well, he's lying and he's not being truthful and it shows character and all that stuff. I get it. Okay.
Right.
But these two were adults that went into an affair knowing that it was wrong. I agree, again, with those that believe that this was wrong. I am not saying this is right, but this was an affair that was two adults, consensual adults. And right now it seems that she's taking advantage of the situation.
Yes.
Okay. So That's all I'm going to comment about that. And I know that we weren't going to talk about politics, but it's complicated because I'll tell you, I've been listening to the news and watching the story develop and seeing the interviews with this lawyer, who, by the way, is getting a lot of camera time.
Okay? Oh, he's getting a lot of. This is going to be the thing that makes him.
Absolutely, and I'm listening to the stories and I'm listening to the arguments, and again, it's complicated, okay? Because this guy paid this guy, and they basically had, there's a lot of, but this goes to show you how, in my opinion, law has become so finicky now and so gray, and honestly, I think that this guy, the lawyer, what's his name, Avenatti,
yes,
is taking advantage of the situation. And just basically, he's just camera hungry, and he's making, all the talk shows and doing all the rounds and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty obvious to me. It seems obvious that he's actually trying to get something from this, and it's just being in front of the camera and just as much as he can publicity for himself. Now he may be defending Stormy Daniels, which I think it's a good thing, but there's no way that you can't look at it because he's all over the damn news.
He is. Magazines. News outlets. I mean, heck, I would bet money on the fact that there will be a book down the line.
Absolutely.
I mean,
there's a lot of things that are coming down.
Right. No, in different news, did you see, I'm not sure if you follow tennis, did you see who made her comeback this week?
Oh my God. Yes. What a great story, huh?
Yes. It was just awesome to watch her. She's so powerful on the court. Like, it's just amazing. And knowing the story about everything that she went through during childbirth, it makes it even that more.
Let me tell the listeners, so at least so they get in the frame of mind. What Ash is talking about, Serena Williams' return to tennis and the Indians. Well, the BNP Paribas, is it Paribas? I'm going to kill that word. Is it Paribas or Paribas? Paribas.
I can't.
Anyway, so it's in Indian Wells. So Serena Williams. So go ahead, tell the story because it's a pretty cool one.
No, I mean, I think you probably know it a little bit better than I do. I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Okay, so what's really cool about the story is at first, after wow, and it seems like an eternity. Serena Williams has returned to the world stage of tennis, playing her first professional game since giving birth 7 months ago to her child, Alexis Olympia. And
yes.
What was remarkable about it is the whole story behind why was it that, or all the things that happened to her after her delivery.
And her delivery wasn't flawless, because it went to an emergency C-section. But then after that, you're right. Go ahead.
So, it was interesting. So she was recently interviewed and featured in this year's February issue of Vogue, in which she actually made the cover with, it's a really cute photograph, and you can see it online of Serena Williams with her baby, and she looks smoking hot. I mean, she just, I'm sure somebody's going to now write me up after I said that. I always say things, and all of a sudden in my head they sounded good. So
right.
When they come out, I'm like, I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, she is smoking hot, and you can see the cover of Vogue, and she's just beautiful. But certainly with her baby. But in the February issue of Vogue this year, she opened up and talked about. She shared what the experience of being a mom, which you also have the opportunity to sort of tell the audience of that, but that she basically had an enviably easy pregnancy, but she ended up going to an emergency C-section because her baby's heart rate dropped so low that they thought that she was going to have a problem. And so
right.
they rushed her to the OR and basically performed an emergency C-section. But that wasn't it. So shortly thereafter, it seems like she was doing okay, but then she started not feeling well. And the next day, Williams said she felt short of breath the next day and suspected she was having a pulmonary embolism.
Oh.
Okay. Now, let me reread that statement because I actually had to pause and think through that one.
Right.
Okay. So let me read it again. And this is, again, I'm quoting an article that was in Fox News. Okay. And it says, Williams said she felt short of breath the next day and suspected she was having a pulmonary embolism.
I mean,
how do you know that what you're having is a pulmonary embolism, right?
Right, because in my experience, like those people, they go quick, they arrest quick.
Right, they can, but what I'm trying to say is that she already knew what the signs and symptoms of a pulmonary embolism were.
Right.
Or at least, because, I mean, I got to tell you, if somebody comes into the emergency room and tells me I'm short of breath, I'm not looking for, the first thing in my mind says, if somebody comes up to me and says, I'm having a pulmonary embolism, I'm short of breath, I will look at them like saying, how do you know that?
Right.
And so it prompted me to do a little bit more research because I was like perplexed by the story because look, and again, this is how detached sometimes I am about media in general, because it continues to read, she had stopped taking her daily anticoagulant regimen because of her recent procedure.
Right.
Williams insisted she get a CT scan and blood thinners despite the nurse's skepticism.
Right. And did you read, not wanting to worry her mother who was visiting, she stepped out in the hallway to flag down a nurse.
So is that what she did?
Yeah, she stepped out in the hall, flagged down, because I read this, flagged down a nearby nurse, insisting that she needed IV with heparin, a blood thinner, and a CT scan to look for clots.
Okay, but that's the whole point. So yeah. I'm reading the story, and as a doctor, I'm saying she insisted she get a CAT scan and blood thinners, despite the nurse telling her that she needed a Doppler.
Right.
And so she goes on. This is again Williams, Serena talking about it. I said, I was like, a Doppler? I told you I need a CAT scan,
right,
and a heparin drip. So she ultimately gets, she overrides the nurses.
She finally gets a CT scan.
Right, and she finally gets a CT scan. And and so, so they discover the clot, and then they put her on anticoagulants, but because she's coughing, because she's short of breath, and that's what usually pulmonary embolism causes you.
Right.
Well, that's one of the symptoms that it causes you. But then she started coughing, and she tore her C-section incision.
Oh.
And because she's on anticoagulants, now she has to go back.
Right.
To the operating room to get the hematoma evacuated from the blood thinners and from the fact that she tore her C-section incision. Well, I mean, that fortunately enough, she's back on the court. She's playing really good. But what it led me to go back and find out, why is this tennis player know? The only way that somebody knows what the symptoms feels like is that if you had it before.
Right.
So
and has she?
Yes. I didn't know that.
I was wondering, the thing that as we're going through this, I'm like, why was she on blood thinners before?
Right. So I had to go back and research it because as a good doctor, I tried to sort of listen to the patient, and the story didn't make much sense because it made it sound like she, or at least in my innocent interpretation, is like she's clairvoyant. She picked out of a differential diagnosis a pulmonary embolism, and she was right. I mean, forget it, Serena. I was going to say, Serena, forget about tennis. Go into medicine. That's your calling, right? But no. So then there was an explanation for it. So I had to go on internet again. I did a research on Serena Williams, and I Googled search Serena Williams and blood clots. And after a couple of clicks down, a couple of pages, I found that she had a pulmonary embolism in 2011. You didn't know that? I didn't know that.
Well, and the thing is that you would think that her doctors and nurses knew that about her history going
Right.
in to give birth. So they would have been hyper vigilant about
Right.
monitoring her, or heck, listening to her. She's telling them.
Totally right. And now it goes to show you a couple of things about healthcare. Okay. We're too busy.
Yes.
We're too busy. Hospitals and healthcare systems are making cuts. There is so much data to process now. And I got to tell you, one of the worst things that we've done now, I understand the logic for it, but it seems to me that in the past, it used to be so much simpler to assess the patient's medical record and find out and talk to the patient and get an idea of what the history and physical is, particularly the past medical history. Because what happened in this situation is, and I don't know the situation with Serena's nurse, okay? I don't know if she was just covering, she was taking over. You know how it works, right? We all, nursing does take some breaks, right? I mean, not nursing, but people, healthcare, they do take breaks, and then basically they pass off to somebody else, and somebody else comes in. And they know kind of the big picture. They don't know the details.
Well, especially with giving birth. They're like, she's a healthy athlete. She just gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Like, what do we need to worry about?
But it should be in the past medical history.
Right.
I mean, it should be. So, and again, in the acute situation, not familiar with what's going on and on and on and on, I can understand that could happen. But I do think that healthcare now has gone into one direction right now with so many red tape, with so many things that you have to fill out. I mean, listen, it's ungodly the amount of information.
The amount of charting that has to be done is just.
Well, yeah. Tell me about that.
It's insane. I mean, because when I got out of nursing school, we had not gone to electronic charting yet. It was your basic paper charts, and that worked. Like, you could open it up, you could see everything you need to see right there. You weren't clicking through 5,000 different pages trying to find, sift through information. And so I feel like now, especially for nurses, is they spend so much more time on the computers because they're required to. There's so much charting that's required, and they do so many audits now, and it's for things that are just not necessary. I mean, there's so many things that you're just like, really, I'm having to go through the effort of doing this rather than being with my patient, hands-on with my patient. Well, and it's sad.
And you hit it on the head. And let me tell you, one of the things that happens to me is that we are getting asked to do more and more and more with less and less and less. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But that's true with everybody in healthcare. Okay.
Right. So, absolutely.
So let me tell you, for those of you listening, don't think that we don't get that it's aggravating to sit there for 3 hours when your child has a fever and you just want your baby, your loved one, to be cared for. But the reality is that policy and a bunch of people that have very little knowledge about what we're doing at the
who have never been at the bedside.
It can't. I mean, listen, it takes me just to sift through electronic records, through chart, through all that, through the amounts of garbage information that needs to be put into a chart. You miss details like this because you're pressured to take care of a problem. You're pressured by the consumer or by the patient that wants care done immediately. And then these are the types of things that basically fall through the cracks, because Serena was the only one, it seems like, that understood that she had a pulmonary embolism, because you know what? Guess what? I had one, and I went through the whole process. And oh, by the way, did you know that in her story, when I read the story, the way that she found out is that she had cut herself in the summer of 2011 on one of her, she had something, I don't know what happened, but she cut herself on a foot, and it ended up requiring 2 surgeries to the point that it got immobilized with one of those boots.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
And so now she basically has honking muscles, right? And now she's immobilized. She can't walk as much. She can't exercise as much. She's traveling all over the place, right?
Which already puts you at risk.
So then that's how she got her pulmonary embolism. The index event that occurred was that she had a leg injury. And so that foot injury immobilized her. Now she's got venous stasis. It's wrapped around, because she had to wear a boot. So now the thing's wrapped around her leg, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden she gets a clot. And then now she did have, the other thing that was interesting when I read it is that she had a pulmonary embolism, but then she was injecting herself. So I guess she was using Lovenox. She probably was using
that
Lovenox.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. But then she actually had to go to the hospital because she developed a hematoma on her abdomen, the size of a grapefruit. And she probably injected one of the epigastric arteries inadvertently.
Right.
And she bled. And that had to be evacuated. So Serena is a rock star for many levels. Okay. She's coming back from basically having a complicated childbirth. Okay.
Right.
To a major tournament. She's winning. She's looking like somebody who's been out for a little bit, but she's looking great. Okay.
Right.
And on top of that, she can be a doctor. Okay.
Right. She's so lucky that she listened to herself. And that's another take home point, I think, for any patient is you got to listen to your gut. You got to really advocate for yourself. You're your best advocate when you're in the hospital. Absolutely.
Okay. So you have another story which actually was really also kind of heartwarming and goes to show you, again, talking about Serena Williams and her comeback. You had another story about another figure that recently made the news this week about coming back with basically a major
or he overcame something major.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about Shaquem Griffin out of the University of Central Florida. Really wowed the scouts at the Combine last weekend. And it was really cool. It was all over Sports Center. But they were talking about, so basically he had his left hand amputated when he was 4. He was born with, I think it's called amniotic band syndrome. And basically it doesn't allow the fingers to grow properly. And so he had lived with this deformed hand for a while. And I was reading something where his mom said she walked into the room one day and saw him with a knife ready to cut his hand off because he was so tired of how it was affecting him. So she said, that's when we knew we needed to go ahead and amputate. Well, fast forward so many years, he's in college playing football, and he last weekend on the bench press did 20 reps of 225 pounds with a prosthetic hand on, which was his personal best. Not only that, then ran the 40-yard dash in 4.38 seconds, which they said is the fastest time ever recorded for a linebacker in the NFL scouting combine. Just think about that for a second. I mean, if you watch the video of him, look it up. He is crazy fast. It's insane. And so they're really talking how he could go pro. And I thought it was cool because they were saying if he's drafted, he'll be the first one-handed player ever to be drafted into the NFL.
Well, and let me tell you, that actually is something that the listeners should pay close attention to, because just recently we came off of the Olympics and how great some of these athletes are, but we oftentimes do not pay close attention to the Paralympics,
right?
Okay? Of people with physical impediments that are basically doing these amazing feats that even people that have 2 hands can't do it. Listen,
right.
I can't bench. I mean, that's basically benching me. I'm about $180, $190.
Right.
I mean, that's basically putting another human being on top of you and bench pressing it, 20 times. That's a feat.
That's bench pressing 2 of me.
Well, you know what? We're coming to an end here, but I just wanted to sneak something in because I think that going into the weekend, I think this is something fun to sort of look into and probably read about. Did you know that Coca-Cola plans to put out its first alcoholic drink?
Really?
Yeah. So it came out this week in the Washington, at least I saw it in Wall Street Journal. And what it was is that Coca-Cola Japan unit is to introduce a fizzy alcoholic drink in the country, and what the company describes as the first alcoholic product it has ever developed. So do you drink Coke products?
I do. Okay. I shouldn't, but I do.
Well, you got to start drinking it because I hear in the background that little baby girl. So I think that's our sign that we got to
wrap it up.
Activities, okay? So why don't you wrap it up? And you know what? I'm going to be in Puerto Rico, but I thought that maybe what I can do is maybe we'll do the show and I can report from Puerto Rico. What do you think?
That'd be awesome.
Okay. So why don't you take it from here, sign off, and then listeners, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all the time we have. And thanks for listening. This is Ash and Gonzo signing off. See you next week.
for genuine, listen and like, thumbs up down there where the little thumb says, and share the episode. And also, we're going to be opening up a YouTube channel in the next couple of months. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get this and other really fun iPodcasts. Again,
Sounds good.
thanks again for listening. See you, Ash.
Bye.